Hi, everyone. Let me admit everybody, and we will start in a minute. Last minute, so everyone will join. If you can hear me well, please type plus in the chat, and we will start soon. Plus. Thank you. Great. Okay, one more person joined. And yes, I think we're good. It's 5:32 on my clock, and I think we can start now. Okay, let me share my screen. And you also let me know if you can see my screen after I share. Let me start presentation with slides. Okay, and I need a chat as well. So also type plus if you can see me. Okay, looks good. Someone already said it, looks good. And I think we should be ready to start. Okay, my name is Slava. I'm test engineer working for Apple. Maybe some of you already see me from previous classes, from webinars. But again, I'm test engineer and I will be your instructor today. And for a couple next session, teaching you Java and Java core. I know that most of you, at least not most of you, maybe all of you, should have by now, by today, have Java installed and one of the editor. I personally prefer IntelliJ IDEA. It's a text editor for coding. So if you have it, please type plus or minus if you do not. Because starting today, we will be having our homework, and the homework will require you to actually do some basic coding, to run code. And, you know, if some of you don't have it, you will still have to do to download Java and to install it. And of course, you can still listen to the lecture, but it will be way less efficient. Okay, great. I see many people have it. So let's start. Let's see what I have on my next slide. It's agenda for today. So I'm going to touch on a very high level what is code convention and how to compile, build, and run your program. We will discuss what data types are there and what is variable in Java. We will touch, today is our first class about object-oriented programming, OOP, right? OOP. So main two instances of that concept is class and object. We will discuss what is class, we will learn it, and what is object of the class. Also, we will talk about what is method, how to create an object, and we will get some homework. So before we start, I want to ask you, does anyone of you already knows something about those topics? Like on a scale, say from 1 to 10, maybe type a number, how confident you feel about this? In terms of Java, or maybe if you ever learned any other language, any other programming language, and you heard of this, maybe you can tell me. If you never ever heard about it, it's okay. We will cover everything from scratch, like from step one, so don't worry. If you know it, it will be kind of repetition. Okay, I see 5, 6, 1, 5, 3, 0. Okay. Great. So some of you maybe have some basic understanding. Feel free to ask questions, even if you never heard about it or had problems. Again, ask questions. We're here to kind of understand that and to learn that. Okay. So let's see what do we have here. Already by now, by today, you should be able to, and you should know how to create your very first Java project. And if you don't, I just left you instruction over here today, if you haven't done that from your previous class, and you can actually do it as a part of your homework as well. So basically you need to have any editor, but I prefer this one, IntelliJ IDEA. So you open your editor, you click create new project, you click next above them when you on your widgets on your windows, and then you can create a project from template. What does it mean from template? It means that it already had some like basic placeholder with your main function. Main in Java is like entry point for any program to run. So anything, whatever you ever will code, will start and will be running from the main method. It's like basically a piece of code. We will see that. For you, maybe let me really quickly show how does it look for people who haven't seen it. It looks like that. So when you open your IntelliJ IDEA, you will see basically and create your first class. I called it main. It will have like this first method, which called main method, right? And you should be able to print hello world in there. So if you have done that, also type plus or minus if you haven't, okay? Or if you understand how to do that. Okay, great. Many people know how to do that, which is great. Nice, nice. Let's get back then to the presentation. Okay. So I also want, like in very beginning of any classes, I want to, like any person who ever start learning Java, I want to pay huge attention to the code convention. Basically, what is code convention? Code convention is kind of set of rules how to write code that it's readable, that it's nicely aligned and understandable for other person. It's basically a set of rules which every developer follows. So whenever you work in any company, basically with other people around, you understand that this, for example, methods should start with lowercase letter, that class names should start with uppercase letter. So as part of your homework, I encourage you, go and read at least a little bit. It's huge documentation about all the rules that are there, but just read some of them, very, very basic, maybe couple first pages to understand on your level of understanding what rules are applicable, right? Basically those rules about where to put spaces correctly, what the name of everything should be, like of variables, of methods, of class, of objects, how to write comments correctly. So it's readable again. It's kind of, good practice to do it. It's like to be polite to other developers who work with you. Okay. So that's what I would encourage you. And then really quick stop about how to run your Java project. So on a higher level, you don't need to go very deeply into understanding, but whenever you write, let me actually open IntelliJ one more time. Whenever we write any code, right, we need to run it somehow. But if you take a look at this code, you will see that it's still like written kind of in a plain English, right? For example, it says public class, public static void main. Those are very basic English words, right? So how basically Java, how computer will understand what to do, right? On a very low level, computer is basically some machine, right? With like some electronic signals, zeros and ones. Like when there is a signal, it's one. When there is no signal, it's zero. It's called like bytecode on a very lower understanding. But over here, Java built up that way that before you run any code, you need to build it and to compile it. So over here, there is like this keyword run. So you want to actually run it. And when you run it, it does everything. It's actually built and compile it for you. So whenever you run any project, you can just click run or click this like green triangle on a side, right? And it will run it and just print in console whatever you know. But sometimes when you will work on some test framework, you will use also other building tools like Maven, for example, that those tools need any other external libraries to build, sometimes even to download. So you might want to build the project, or even there is option to rebuild. Why it's useful? Why it could be useful? Because sometimes when you just run the project, some data could be cached, right? And you see that you don't see your updates. So the point over here is basically to rebuild your project, recompile it, and then run it one more time. Okay, so that's a little bit information about that. And how does it look? Let me start slideshows. How does it look? It's basically your Java code with extension .java, right? It's a file called simple.java. It goes through the compiler. Compiler is already built in, right, in Java. And it basically translates it into bytecode that machine, your computer, understands. Okay? But for you, again, right now, it's just enough to click on that compile code and you'll be done. So far, so good. So let's get just right into Java syntaxes, into Java instances, and into Java core. So one on the main instance in Java is variable. What is variable? First of all, you can imagine it as some kind of container, as a glass of water, right? It's a glass of water. I have it right here, okay? So it's some kind of container that can hold some data. Basically, what is programming? Programming is manipulation with data. That's all you do. And to manipulate data, you need to store it somewhere, right? So you need a container. On the level of computer, it's kind of allocation, some piece of memory for your data. So you need basically to do something with data, you need to have it, right? You need to place it somewhere. So you need a container for that. And that container is variable. So what the rule, kind of, if you Google what is variable in Java, like the first or second link would tell you that it's a data container that saves the data values during Java program execution. So it saves the data value. It basically holds the data. Every variable is assigned a data type. I'll get to the types in a while. So what it is, again, right now I want to remember and understand. So variable is basically allocated piece of computer memory that you're gonna use, right? And when we talk about types, there are two main things why we need a type for that variable. First of all, what is type? Type kind of serves two functions. First of all, it tells you what that value could be. For example, it could be any string value. If I say like print out hello world, so hello world is a string, right? Or it could be like integer value, like 1, 2, 3. Maybe I need to store some age or some, I don't know, grades for the school program. It could be like basically any integer value. Or sometimes, not sometimes, but in most programming languages, variable can also store some Boolean expression. What is Boolean expression? It basically has two states, true or false. Usually, sometimes when we need to make some decisions, like in if conditions, we touch on that later. But for example, if we need to decide how our program will run in one way or in another, we need to kind of get a value and store true or false. And basically, if something is true, our program will run one way. If something is false, it will run in another way. So basically, we need some kind of variable that will store true or false. That's on a higher level. So, and also, whenever we have this type specified, Java knows on a lower level how much space do we need to allocate to that type. For example, string could take more space than some integer value or than char value, and so on and so forth. So the two main parts that we want to know about variables in Java is that it stores some value and it has allocated piece of memory based on its type, okay? And I already discussed a little bit about possible types in Java, but there are way more. On a very high level, we can divide them into primitive data types and non-primitive data types. So we'll get into non-primitive a little bit later, but the primitive one could be like Boolean type, what I already told you. It could be true or false value. Then it could be numeric type. What it means, like integer values or floating point values with a floating point, like decimal values, right? And even integers itself, if you look down here, can be divided into 4 groups, like byte type, short type, int type, and long. Basically, it depends on how much space will be allocated, how many bytes of code will be allocated to hold your variable of integer type. Mostly people used int, but for example, I know that for many banks, when people write programs for finance, whenever you need store salary values, right, for employees, those stored in long integers. Many often like in cents, I know. So they don't store it in decimal or in float, but they store it in cents, and that should be like a very huge integer value. It's stored in long time. Okay, so any questions right now? Like, tell me if you have any questions, because I'm gonna move on and it should be 100% clear. Like, please type plus if you understand what we are talking about, right? So on a code level, I can just do it like that. Int, for example, age, right, equals 10. Okay, everyone understands, great. Let's get back to see. So I've already just showed you in Java how to declare a variable, but let's have a closer look. So we need 3 parts, right? First part, in the beginning, we put data type. What type of that value will be? It could be string or char or again integer. Int stays for integer. So I put int a. A is a name, right? I need to name it somehow. It could be anything. It's custom value that I give it to you. And you should give kind of meaningful values. For example, if you want to count something, call it count. Of course, you can call it like ASDF or test or temp or whatever, but in a while, you will not remember what have you been doing, what have you been thinking. So all names should be very meaningful. And then actual value. So we put value int 8 equals 10, means we have a variable a, type of it int, and it holds value 10. Okay, and there are just some other examples of different types of variable. For example, string name Slava. Strings, see, they need quotes. So whenever you add them, they need quotes. Or for example, char is a type, letter, it's a name, equals a in a single quote. So this is just a type in Java for chars, right? Then double, for example, it's called 3.1. Double again with float point, like any values like decimals and so on and so forth. Then we touch a little bit on Boolean. Boolean is finished equals false, for example, or true. Long, salary, char mark, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's move on. So I will touch a little bit on a size based on type. You can Google it and see what other sizes allocated. But most popular, maybe sometimes even on interviews, you could be asked are size of integers in Java. For example, the smallest one is below byte. It's called byte, and it actually in bytes only 1 byte allocated to hold values. So what does it mean for us? Again, depending on how many bytes are allocated for our value, it also means what values could be stored in that variable. It means, for example, for byte, we could have only values from -128 till 127. And then for integer, for example, integer has 4 bytes allocated in Java. So values in integer has this range, right? Why this could be important for you? Sometimes I saw issues, actual algorithms in developers when they use, for example, integer value, but algorithm deals with such huge numbers that at some point, value of that integer was bigger than the maximum allowed for that value. And what happened in that case? In that case, we will have like integer overflow. What overflow means? Overflow means that when there is no value, for example, it will be 48 at the end, something that you try to assign, it will start over from the beginning, right? And you will have like something small, something totally different, unexpected. So you can try and play, for example, create a byte. Oh my God, I keep clicking. You can try to create a byte type of any variable and try to assign it, for example, 128 or 150 and print out to the console. Try to see what happens. So that's when data type overflow happens. That's why it's also important. Okay. Before we move on to our object-oriented concepts, last time I want to ask you any questions here. Please feel free. You can even try to unmute yourself, but any questions do we have? If no, just tell me no questions. Okay. Or you can type a question if you want to, or you may just, maybe unmute yourself. No, we're all good? Okay, let's get back to the presentation then. And I also closed the chat. Let me open it. Okay. What's next? Now we're gonna get into object-oriented programming concepts. And the main subject when we start talking about object-oriented programming is a class. What is class basically? So class, again, if you Google any description, you can see that it says class is a blueprint for creating objects. So objects, basically, it says a particular data structures, providing initial values for state, member, variables, or attributes, and implementation of behavior, member function of methods. So it's kind of complicated description, right? Even though it's one of the simplest I found. But what I like to tell people who I teach, that class is kind of user-defined type, what describes a certain type of object. So what does it mean? We just discussed with you different types, like which are available in Java, like for strings, for integers, even Boolean. But sometimes we need to hold some kind of value, some abstract value, not integer, not a string, of some other type. So that's when we can actually create our own type. And class is basically a file that will describe this type, this our new customized type, right? So it says over here, it's a blueprint. So blueprint is kind of, sometimes I'm thinking about like how you make cookies. Have you ever made cookies? You need some kind of shape, for example, a heart or a circle to make that cookies. And you have that kind of description and you can create many, many cookies. So basically that describes the type of what cookie will be. Or for example, if you want to build a house, you need some, like blueprints, how it will look like. So schemas, like when they discuss how many stores there are gonna be, how many windows it will have, and like what electricity would look like. So that all kind of description of something that we want to create. And what we're gonna create is actually an object. So class is a description of the object. So you can think about object as also about, as you think about variable, something that we want to create is our object, and it has customized type, and that customized type is a class. And class kind of have some other additional values, okay? We will get deeper into that, but on a high level of the abstraction, you need to understand what is class. Class is a description of the object. It's a customized type. And for example, if I have cars over here, I just drawn to you. So class car, you see, it's like kind of drawn as blueprint. And based on that, you can create different type of objects. For example, if it's car, we can create Audi, Nissan, or Volvo, very specific ones. Okay. Any questions right now about the class? You will get a better understanding maybe when we get into examples. But right now, just understand, it's on the level, on a higher level of, okay, someone raised a hand. Yes, you can ask question, well, should I unlock you, right? Or can you unmute yourself actually? Or maybe type a question in a chat, right? If there is a question. Mm-hmm. Yes, can I unmute? Yes, you should be able to unmute, I think. Let me double check. I think people have option to unmute. Oh, unmute themselves. Yes, now you can. Try to unmute yourself.
You hear me now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, appreciate it. Good. All right. So I just want to make sure I wrote it down.
Mm-hmm.
You said class is a description of the object.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
It's a description of the object, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Go ahead and mute yourself so we will not be like overlapping.
I have a question. So when you say class is a description of an object, are we saying in layman's term? Let me use an example. Maybe I want to buy a shirt, and we have all kinds of shirts. You have the Tommy, you have the Christian Dior, you have the Gucci. So in this way, I could say that it's gonna be like what kind of preference I prefer. If I like Gucci, is that the object?
So yes, Gucci could be kind of one of the specific type of your t-shirt, right? Or any other. And like basically the t-shirt itself, how it was created, like for example, this is t-shirt of this size, of this color, of this like t-shirt, like how would we describe a t-shirt in terms of class? We will create a class called t-shirt, and we will have that it has some kind of attributes. What is attributes? It's actually our variables. So class can have a couple variables in their descriptions. That's why it kind of becomes customized type, because it can have a couple different variables. And that could be size of the t-shirt, brand of the t-shirt, color, for example.
Texture,
Maybe,
all that. Okay.
yeah. And then when we create an object, we can kind of initialize those values. For example, size, M, color, white, brand, Gucci. And that's very specific t-shirt, very specific object, but the description of what we want to get basically in that class. And we can create many different t-shirts of any type and any brand.
So technically what you're saying is class is like a blueprint for anything. But if you want to add any other features, that is where variables come in. Like you want to customize it. Let's say you want to build a house now. You have a bungalow and you have a two-story house. But the house itself is a class. House is something that has a roof, doors, kitchen, and all that. But
yes,
whatever you want,
some kind of common characteristic in that house, right?
Okay.
For example, the more common they are, kind of, the more similar objects will be. Then we kind of get into inheritance. I don't want to touch on that right now. But for example, this house, I want to create basically different objects, but all that objects should have something similar, some similar description. For example, if we talk about person, right? I'm a person. I have head, I have 2 legs, 2 hands, I have my body. Yes. I have my age, I have my, I don't know, skin color, color of my eyes, and something else. And then I can kind of create a person and gender, for example. I can create a person with that age, with skin color, with eye color, with a name, and so on and so forth. Like I can create many different people, but everyone will have something in common. Okay?
Yes.
Some analogy could go from like animals classes, right? And like we learn in biology, right? There are animals and there are birds, and then can go on by similar characteristic, like family of something. Okay? Great. Okay, and let's see. before we get to the methods, one more thing. So each class, as we just said, has its description of the object. And that description contains of two parts. Basically, it can called in different ways, but correct way to call it that each class has state and behavior. State and behavior, you can write it down. State, it's all fields of the class or variables. Fields and variables are the same. For example, name is a field of the class. If I have class person, it has a variable name. For example, it's a string variable. It's class field. Class is field, right? And it also called its state. And all like state is basically all of the fields in class, all the variables, which also called fields, like field name, field age, field, I don't know, color of eyes, field gender. Some of them could be repeating in terms of type. I could have couple strings or couple integers, but all of them are fields, and they also called state. They kind of described what I have. They describe, for example, if it's a person, they describe person's state, okay? And then state and behavior. What is behavior? Behaviors are actually methods, or the other word for them is functions. In Java, we don't use function, we call them method. Basically, it's kind of action behavior, right? Something actionable. What this class can do. Most times, class somehow manipulates with the data, with their fields. But in our simplest example, like for example, when we talk about person, what behavior can person do? Person can, for example, speak or eat or sleep or, I don't know, speak or go for a job or go to vacation and so on and so forth. For example, for the car, what can we do? Car can drive, car can stop, car can, I don't know, turn on lights, and so on and so forth. So basically, it's some methods, some actions that manipulate with your fields. Okay? So, and since we touched already on the methods, and methods also called member functions or methods, member of the class. The other name also for fields you can see is attributes in this presentation. Okay? So let's, like we already talked a little bit about variables. We know how to create new variables. And now let's see how to create new method, right? So we can add those methods into our class description to describe the class. So to describe the class, we need basically create its name and add some fields and methods. That's it. That's what description is. That's what blueprint is. Some fields, set of fields, which we know, and some actions, some behavior, what it can do actually, right? And then we basically will be calling those methods and so on and so forth. So let's see what is method. Again, the description of the method is, it's a block of code, easy, right? Which only runs when it's called. So it could be called from main or from something else. I'll tell you later. But let's see what I also written for you. You can pass data, or it says parameters. Parameters is also other word for variables, but parameters, we say parameters when they are related to the method signature. So methods, like variables inside methods signature called parameters, kind of methods variables called parameters, okay? You can pass data into known as parameters into a method, right? You can pass some data. Methods are used to perform certain actions, as I said, behavior, and then also known as functions. So again, I don't encourage you to use function because Java has its own terminology, and in Java we use word method. But for example, if you have a code on Python, Python uses functions as a terminology for the same kind of piece of code. Okay, so method must be declared within class, so inside the class, right? You cannot just declare a method somewhere outside. Actually, everything in Java should be written inside the class. even when you created your first class, which contains method main, it contained it inside the class. Let me show you. So for example, over here, you see, I just have one method, but I have over here public class main, and it has curly bracket open and curly bracket closed. Like between those, like between line 3 and 11, I can write my code. I cannot write it somewhere outside the class, right? I can write it over here, somewhere here, that's fine, but not below line 10 in this case right now, okay? And even our main, it's a method, right? It's a method, and we'll get further how to describe it. So methods declared within class, and they like how to define it. So we have the actual name of the method. If you look below, you see sum. Word sum is method name, right? And all names of the methods should be followed by parentheses over here. Parentheses could, you see, so that's how you know it's a method. It has parentheses after the name. So that's kind of first sign for you. And over here, parameters list. You see like int A, int B, it's just variables, but they call parameters when they inside method, right? And sometimes method can have them, sometimes no. For example, it could be just empty, like no parameters. It could be just empty parentheses. That's fine. Okay, and also methods should have returned type. What is this? Basically, you remember like variables have type. So method have return type. Sometimes it could be like any actual type, like integer or string or Boolean. Sometimes method may not return anything. It's possible for method, but not for something else. For like variables should always have type, but method may not return anything. In that case, you will see void here. Word void is kind of like in the main. Main doesn't return anything. So void stays here, meaning it doesn't return anything. What means return? Return means, for example, if I have my method, in my case, it's called sum, it will count how much is A plus B. And it should return the result. So return the result for me to use later. For example, in calculator, it's a simple project, right? To write a calculator, when I want to add two numbers, I pass my numbers inside the method, like 2 and 3. And I want 5 to be returned as integer. So that's why we need to put type over here, which will tell us what type this method returns. Or maybe if it doesn't return any type. Okay? And method body also written inside curly brackets. Like almost every section of code in Java, like classes or methods, are written within curly brackets, okay, where method body is. Again, those are kind of our custom methods, which we want to add inside our class. Because class, as we said, it's kind of customized type that we want to create for ourselves. But in Java, there is already a number of libraries which we can use, and they have predefined methods. For example, if we print something to the console, like hello world, we use a predefined println method to print something. And there are many other methods that we can already use, right? They're very basic, but still, okay? So let's see, any questions here about method signature, how to declare methods, how it's used? Okay. Okay, if no questions, let's move on. So, for example, I want you to see, if methods returns a sum of two integers, I would write it like in the beginning, there is word public, don't pay much attention to it. It's access modifier. We will get into that later. Just skip it for now. So it just means how accessible that method is. So right now we're just looking at everything after that. Int is a return type because I asked like method should return sum of two integers. So it returns integer, right? method name, 2 parameters, A and B, also integers, and return is a keyword. Basically, it tells you what it should return. So return keyword only written here when there is non-void type. Okay, if type is not void, we need to write return. If we put, in other words, if we put any type over here in our method, string, char, boolean, integer, byte, double, float, any, we should write return statement. Return is a result keyword and return something of that type. So when we type, for example, string here, we should return some kind of string. Okay. Can you give a random example of a method on IntelliJ? Oh, never mind, we're going through examples. So that's basically how method is defined, right? Then, for example, if I ask you method that just prints sum of 2 integers. So I don't want to return, I just want to print it to console. So it's number 2, public, and over here I put void. Void again means I don't return anything. So my method doesn't return anything, that's fine. It could be, but it still has 2 parameters, right? But it just print this result. System out println A plus B. Again, don't pay much attention to system out println right now. We get later to that, just accept it. To print something, you need to type those 3 words, system.out.println. And then in parentheses, I can print even mathematical operations, right? Java will understand like basic mathematical operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and a couple more. Okay, and then maybe I want to write a method that prints and returns sum of 2 integers. So how do I do it? If it needs to return anything, I put integer over here. Again, same name with 2 parameters, open and close curly bracket. I will write my print statement A plus B, and I also will return it over here, right? Let me get back up, right? What can I do like over here? How to kind of optimize this piece of code? For example, I see there is a repetition, A plus B, right? And over here also A plus B. So what can I do? Actually, inside this method, I can create another value, integer value, and call it, for example, result, int result, and make it equals A plus B, right? And after that, let me show you on a presentation so you will understand if you can see it. So what I'm telling, I can create like integer value, call it result, and say it equals A plus B. And then over here, I want to print result. Oops. Result and returned result as well. Result, right? So it just tells you that you can create another variables inside methods to do some operation with data. That's what we did. We did some operation with data, right? We manipulated the data and we returned it somewhere else or print it or both. Okay? So let's move to the next part. Next part is actually one of object-oriented concepts. It asks on all questions about Java and object-oriented programming. Encapsulation. What is encapsulation? Maybe you heard that before, maybe no, I'm gonna teach you. So encapsulation is basically hiding data. And how we hide data in Java, we add some access modifiers to it. Remember how I told you over here, don't pay much attention, to the public keyword over here. And maybe you saw that even when you created class, like public class, something, name of your class, or public static void main. You saw word public. What is public? Public is access to this method. It tells you what type of access programmer have for that specific method or field, right? So there are 4 main not for main altogether. There are 4 access modifiers. Most popular are public, private, and protected. And if you don't put any type, just if you leave it empty, blank, right, it will be default value, which means package visibility. What does it mean? So for now, again, don't get too scary, but I want to tell you, so public means that your method or your field is available everywhere in any kind of place of your program. What do I mean by any place? You see, I have this class, like letter C over here means it's class, right? Main.java. I can create many classes, and actual programs have number like hundreds of classes, tens, hundreds, maybe thousands of classes, right? When I have something declared as public, it means my method or my value will be accessible from everywhere in the program, right? Then if I declare it as private, it means, for example, I can create something like over here, like this, my main class. I can create like private. It also let me private. Oh, it's in main. It kind of doesn't like it, but let me do it inside main. So I can do like private. It also doesn't like it because it's main, like, it doesn't matter. For example, private A, private int A, right? Let's see why it doesn't like it. Make not private, okay, because it's in main, but we'll get to that. So basically, whenever I create any value, which is variable or field inside class, it should be like good practice is to make it private. Why it's important? So when we talk about encapsulation, encapsulation is hiding data, right? Hiding, not necessarily hide it, but give it only needed level of access. Needed level of access. What does it mean? That all fields inside class, you remember, for example, on the example of person class, we have, for example, person's name, person's age, person's, I don't know, salary. All those fields, which also called state, should be declared as private. Why? We want to hide it so other classes don't have access, and as a result, they cannot change those values accidentally. By accidentally, I mean, like, of course, it's one programmers or two programmers or couple people who are working on one project. And I don't want, for example, when I created a person with this name, with this age, with this salary, I don't want any other piece of code, any other piece of my program, and maybe some other developers working on that program as well, change my data accidentally, data of my class, right? That's why all fields should be declared as private. It's good common practice. Sometimes, in very rare cases, you may want to declare fields as public, but you should have very good reason for that and explain why you're doing that. Like, there are some design patterns in coding, how you design your system when you may declare your variable, your field, as a public or protected. But in most cases, I want you to remember that all fields should be private. And methods, on the other hand, methods, the behavior, should be public, because methods I want to access, I want to call from everywhere, basically, from most places of my program, because methods do some actions. Methods I want to be accessible. They like doing behavior. They're doing something, some logic, right? So methods are public. It's like rule of thumb, and fields are private. Okay, we have one more word here called protected. What means protected? Again, don't get frustrated if you will not get it right away, but we will learn a little bit later about another object-oriented concept, which called inheritance. So inheritance means like there are some parent class and it could have child class, children's basically, right? So that's inheritance. We will touch in details later. So protected means that my fields, my variables, are accessible from my current class and from their children's, basically for the classes which they came from, kind of. Again, don't get like, it's just a little bit more than private, protected a little bit more access than private. And default means package visibility. So in Java, when you create your class, let's get back to IntelliJ. When you create your class, over here, you may see like there is different packages, like, for example, SRC means source, right? And I create some other, basically, I can create some other packages. It's how your program will be organized, right? One package for one type of tests, for example, other package for different type of tests. And default or package visibility means that your field will be visible inside this package. Package is basically like a folder, right? On your computer, you have folders. So variable in Java, all code organized also inside packages, inside the kind of folders, right? So in Java, that default means that your variable or your methods, whatever you declared as default, it means it has package visibility, level of the package. Okay, any questions here? Let me know. I talk fast, so if you're not following or something is not clear, feel free to ask your questions, because if you don't understand something, it will stay with you further when you like, gonna learn something else. And it's really, really important. Like whatever we're talking about, encapsulation is very important, about classes, about methods. It's like basics. Okay, all good. Please type plus if you are following, if you are still with me. Okay. One person has typed plus. Another one. Okay, good. Again, I encourage you to ask questions because you want to get good understanding of those like core principles. Just need a refresher on all when you're done. Okay, we can go over and have some kind of overview. When you're done with the presentation, please briefly summarize and go over the first slide one more time. Okay, yeah, we can do that definitely, not a problem. Methods are public always. So in most cases, you want to declare method with a public access modifier. Sometimes there are some very, very rare cases when method can have other access modifier, but mostly, especially for testing purposes, methods are public and fields are private. Okay? So I don't want to tell you yes, always. There are some rare cases, like corner cases, exceptional cases, but most times, yes. Okay? Maybe later on we'll get into design patterns, maybe at least into one design pattern. I can show you when methods or fields could have different access modifiers. But again, it's rather rare case. Okay? So let's move on. Let's see what we have. Again, encapsulation is kind of hiding data, and not even hiding, but giving data the right access. And modifiers have those values: public, protected, default, and private, right? And that's how we can see how they are visible, how they're accessible. On a class level, all of them are visible, right? On a package level, as I said, package visibility, public, protected, and default. With protected, it also depends. Like, it's good practice to have your inherited classes within one package. But in case if it's not, someone maybe build it, so it will be not visible, right? Because we say that protected visible only when there is inheritance, like parents and children have that visibility, right? Subclass, that's what I say about inheritance. Subclass also known as a children. Like basically we have class and we have something that came from that class, so subclass, right? So it's kind of about inheritance, like parent and children. or subclass. Sometimes parent class also called superclass. You can hear like super actually also reserved word in Java, so you can say it. Okay, and global visibility only for public access modifier when it's seen everywhere. Just a quick, table for you to kind of remember what I already said. Okay, let's move on. So let's think about objects now. We already discussed about class. So we said that class is a description of the object. Class have state and behavior. But state and behavior of what? Of the object, right? Class is describing the object. And I talked about person a little bit. So let's see what I have here on this slide. Again, also object can be called as instance of the class. It's kind of, terminology, or it can be called entity also. So object is an entity with some characteristic, state and behavior. States are fields inside object and behaviors are methods, right? For example, I have class named person. And one more addition over here, you remember I told you in the beginning about code convention. So code convention for class names says that all classes should start with uppercase. It's a good practice to do it, right? Of course, when you run the program, Java will understand, and Java doesn't care how you write it, what you put with lowercase, what is like when you add any extra spaces or whatever. But code should be readable, and all people like who code in Java understand if they say something uppercase, it means class, because only classes start with uppercase. Okay, so we have class person, we have its data members. Also, members is another word for fields for classes state, right? What we have, for example, we have unique ID. Maybe like in just an example, it could be anything. Maybe some person need to have ID. Maybe it's some, I don't know, we're writing a program for HR people, right? Each person should have name, maybe in this class, age, city, and gender. Basically, those are common characteristics for all people that will be created using this class, right? Basically, again, class is something that lets you to create many instances of something with common characteristic, but they will be slightly different, right? They can have different name, different age, different gender, different city, and so on and so forth. Like actual values, is that how they different? But those values, the fact that they have those values is something that they have in common, right? Then person can have those methods. So person, in our case, can have method eat, study, sleep, and play, right? And that's what actual objects look like. For example, we can have person with name John, age 35, city, gender, and so on and so forth. And very same, we can create another object with different name, with different age, with different city, with different gender. Sometimes some values could be the same, but even if we create two objects with the same values, those will be still two different objects from the Java memory perspective, right? Because whenever we create new object, some piece of memory is allocated inside, like Java. And when this memory is allocated, it holds values, and it's like a box, right? When we talk about variables, we said it's like a glass, right? If I put same, for example, juice in one glass, and I take another glass and put same amount and same juice in the other glass, I still need two glasses. It's not the same glass, right? That's how we create new object. It holds some values. It could be different values. I could have different juice or whatever. But it doesn't matter. I still need to allocate memory for that. Any questions right now about objects? I think I lost my chat. Methods only consist of verbs and data. Yes, that's actually very good practice, how to give names. Basically, method should tell you about action. So it should be verb actually. That's very good. Like you notice that, right? And yes, data members or members of fields, they are nouns, right? Mostly, in most times. Sometimes, again, in very rare cases, maybe you don't know how to create method and it needs to be noun, but it's rather not good practice. Okay, good practice, yes, methods is kind of a verb, and it kind of gives you that understanding. It's behavior, right? State and behavior. Object has state, it's all its data, and behavior, it's kind of manipulation with data. Again, we're talking on a higher level, it's kind of abstract level, but object-oriented programming built on this level of abstraction. It's basically how we organize code. Like that's the difference between scripting languages and object-oriented languages. Because object-oriented languages, they all kind of organize code within classes. And programmer creates objects of those classes to manipulate with data. Okay, and when object-oriented programming was invented, it was like a huge breakthrough, right? People start using and they saw how useful is it, how much easier it is, how maintainable code became. Okay, so let's see what I have next. So how to create an object. So to create an object, we need, first of all, for example, from method main, say we have created another class and we go back to our main. You remember main method is our entry point. We go to main and there is this kind of signature of how we create any object, right? First of all, we need to put class name in the beginning, and class name over here, it's your class name. For example, like person, if we created a class person, over here we put person. It's actually like a type when we talk about variables, right? Type like integer or string. So it's our customized type, right? We're basically creating another class, another variable to hold, to store some data. Then it goes object name, any name. For example, it could be, I don't know, person Mary, I can call it, or person one, anything, right? Then equals, so object equals to something, like a variable. For example, int count equals 5. Over here, class name, our customized type, person equals, and over here, the small difference is keyword new. So new means it's a new object that will be created, and it also tells Java that it needs to allocate some memory for this object. How much memory Java will figure out itself. You remember how I told you that for integer, for example, there are 4 bytes allocated in the memory, right? For our object, we don't know how much, but it also depends, right? How huge that object is. We don't care about that anymore. So we just need to put keyword new, and it followed by class name constructor. We will not, I will not bug you much about constructors. We'll talk about that on our next lesson. But right now, just basically know that constructor has the same name as your class. Like over here in the beginning, you see class name, and it's class name with parentheses, like a method, but with name of the class. Okay? So it's a constructor. Basically, we are constructing our object. We're allocating memory to store it, and we are building it using constructor. It's the same signature for any object you want to create. It starts with class name, with object name, with keyword new, and then it goes constructor, which is the method with the same name as a class. Okay? How we know it's the method? Because it has parentheses at the end. You remember I told you, method has parentheses. Okay? Okay, then let me actually see any questions. Somehow I cannot see chat. Let me actually.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, I'm going to be using the class name twice, right?
So it's not necessarily class name. Yes, it's class name, but it's the constructor name. It's just the same as a class name. Okay. I told you a little bit about constructors later. Right now, don't get confused, but just know to create an object, you need constructor of that class.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, so let's see what's next. So we have our object. For example, it could be person, right? Person one. And how we gonna access our data, our fields of the object? Like you remember, person can have name, can have age, gender. How we gonna access it, right? So we can access, or how we gonna access its behavior, its methods. So to access that, we use basically dot. You see, object name dot, and then you will have the list of all states and behavior of that class, if it's visible for you, if you have access of that object, right? Everything that's available you can get by dot. Okay, so we just write this name of the object followed by dot, and then we want to write either our like variable if we have it, like name, or our method if we have it, what's described inside the class. Okay, that's accessing. Okay, so let's get back to the code, and I want really slowly show you what you should be doing, like something similar in your homework. Everything that I just discussed, how it works. So I have my main. So whenever you start any project, you need to have a class with main method. I even call this class main. You see, it just uppercase. As I told you in the beginning, all class names should start with uppercase. Methods actually start with lowercase, like main is a method. And also our fields, our variables should start with lowercase, right? So let's see what we want to create. We want to create new class. We go to files, new, and select Java class, right? So I want to put name person here, as we discussed, right? So you see another tab created over here, and it's actually another file with, you see, person.java with Java extension. Whenever you create a class, you actually create file with that Java extension, okay? So it's a public class. Well, class is also public because they want to be accessible from different part of program, right? And I want to create, let's say, what fields person can have. Let's create as many as we can. For example, I want to start with name, right? Name is string. And we remember I told you that state fields should be private. So I start with private. You see, IntelliJ already gives me some hints. It's private. Then it will be string, and I call it name, right? I don't put any values here because class is just a description of the object. It doesn't have any values, right? What else I can create? I can create some, for example, integer value, say age for that person, right? What else I can create? For example, I want to create long and put salary. Okay, and say we want to build some system for our HR department, and our HR department needs to know if that person is a newcomer. So I want to create some field and call it is newcomer. Oops, you didn't like it. Oh, I know I didn't like it. I want to actually ask you, what type should I put here for this field? What do you think? Like type in a chat, what type should be? Integer. It could be integer actually in some cases, but there is a better type that I can use for that. Because if I say, if the person is a newcomer, the answer to that could be yes or no, right? Value could be yes or no. It could be integer and I can assign like 0 or 1, right? It could be string if I say 0, yes or no, but it's not very useful because string could be anything, right? For integers, it's a bit better than string because integers with 0 and yeah, Boolean, great. Boolean is exact and very popular actually names for any fields. Whenever you see something start with is newcomer, is counted, is available, it's most likely will be Boolean because the answer to that question, true or false. Okay, so Boolean it is. Okay, is newcomer, right? True or false? Do we have newcomer? Okay, and let's think about some methods which we can have. Oh, let's actually think about some other fields. Like any ideas what else we can add to this class? Any other state we want for that person to be. It could be anything. We have, for example, city, right? Or maybe we can put address. It's also good to have it string, and we call it address. What else? Any characteristic actually could be there. It could be maybe not application for HR. It could be application for, I don't know, for your bank or for your lease office, or maybe for your school, or maybe, I don't know, for your hospital. Maybe if it's for hospital, you will be caring about like some health conditions, right? It could be anything right now, actually, right? This person doesn't specify what we care about, right? Okay.
What about specification for sex type, either male or female? Can we
Say it
include that
again.
as well? What about specification for sex type, either male or female? Can we include that as well?
Yes, we can. We can add either sex or gender. Let's say it will be better. Yeah, we can add anything. Private, let's make it string as well, right? If we care about that, and we put gender, right? Great, I love it. Now we want to add some actions, right? Action again. For now, we're just practicing and anything like, first of all, action is a method. Method is public. For example, I want to have some methods that will not return anything. So I put void and I say, like, for example, speak. I call it speak. Person can speak. This method will not have any values as a parameters, and open and close curly bracket, and it will just print something. Print like system out. Print, and I say hello, for example, right? That's what we want to do for now. We can add another methods and use actually fields inside parameters and some kind of manipulate with them. But for now, I want to get back to the main, and what we will do, we will actually create the object of that class. So how do we do it? We create person, we call it person. I actually can even create an object with the same name as class, but how compiler will understand, how Java will understand it's not a class? Because it's lowercase, you see? So Java is case sensitive, right? If there is some word inside Java, even if it's customized word, but it starts with lowercase or uppercase, it will consider it as a different words, as totally different instances. So Java can do this, or I can create like person1, for example, just not to get confused. Then equals new keyword, right? And new person with parentheses. You remember this is a constructor. That's how we create object. And we will talk a bit more in details about it later on. Okay. So that's what we did. And so one is to be in caps. Oh, that's actually a great question. So you notice how I put one with uppercase, right? Letter O. So there are different, again, I encourage you as a part of your homework, read a bit of code convention. Java, typically, like most people in Java, using so-called camel style naming convention. What means camel style? It means whenever you have to name something with more than one word, for example, in my case, person one, like person is a separate word and one is a separate word, you use camel style. It means the next word should start with uppercase. So it's kind of good convention. For example, if I want to call it person one Mary, Mary starts with uppercase, and not because it's her name, but it's because I want to do. Or for example, if I put it like Mexico or whatever else, or I don't know, female, like that, right? It's called camel style, okay? Like blue ocean, exactly, right? The good practice start with lowercase still, because all names of the fields and methods and of everything actually, except for classes, in Java should be lowercase. Everything is lowercase, only class names and class constructor, going ahead a little bit, starts with uppercase. Everything else should be lowercase. It's kind of, good style. It's like to be polite, I would say, in Java, right? So it's kind of set of rules. I do encourage you to read that code convention because, again, it's like basic grammar, right? We have a question. Yes, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, you said class name will start off lowercase and the constructor will be capital.
Class name should be capitalized as well. Class name starts with uppercase, and object name, you see, it's not a class. I created object of that class. Object starts with lowercase. Okay, the first letter only. Then if we need like more than one word for the name, we do it like kind of with capitalized. Class name plus constructor caps only, right? So class and constructor. And you remember I told you that constructor has the same name as the class. It's only kind of also method, so it has parentheses at the end. Okay. And like over here, when we look above this code, like public starts with lowercase, static starts with lowercase, void is lowercase, main, it's the name of the method, it's lowercase. But let's take a look over here, string. You remember how I told you that string is a type of a string, right? But you see, it started with uppercase. And I just told you that in Java, only classes start with uppercase. So it means that string is a class. But it's built-in class in Java, which is built-in for us. So string is not just some type, it's very special type. We'll get to that a bit later. It's called wrapper. So, like over here, I created this integer age. Int start with lowercase as well. Int, char, boolean, they all start with lowercase. Only string starts with uppercase. So why is that? Because string and any manipulation, actually, manipulations with strings are very popular, and there are a lot of you can do with strings. So string is a class, and Java developers created a lot of built-in methods, like functions, to manipulate with strings. And we will have separate lesson later on about actual string methods. So for now, you remember how I told you, class is your special customized type of object, right? Class kind of your customized type. So string is also a type, right? But string is a class as well. Okay, so that's what I want you kind of remember, that string uppercase. So it means string is a class, and it is a class. Okay, so if you open, like, in Java, in IntelliJ, if you have MacBook, you can type like hold command and then click on it. In Windows, I believe machine, it's control, and you click on it and it will open you the class. You see over here, I have another tab, it's called string.java. It shows like little locker over here. You see lock. It means I cannot change anything over here. I cannot type inside. It says read only because it's built-in class. I can only make any changes and updates in classes that I created, but I cannot change something that was created for me, right, before. And you can see that this is actual string class created by developers. don't get too frustrated again. I'm just want to tell you that has also like some states. For example, over here we have private value, private int hash, for example, right? It's, what is it? It's just field, right? And below that we have some kind of again, don't get frustrated, but it has some other methods that we can actually use when we do any strings manipulation. Okay. So that's what I did. And what I want to show you is how to access that method using my object. So we created this object. It's called person1 Mary Mexico female. Okay, let it be. And then we can click dot and see we have this speak method. You see there are way more methods. You see this like M, little m inside the red circle. It means it methods. That's all available methods. And you see there are way more methods than we created. We created just one, right? But there is a list of them. It means that Java for every object has other built-in methods that can be used on a system level. You might not will be needed to use it much, but sometimes you can. For example, you can create toString, like make something into string representation. Or for example, each object can have method to get class, to get its class, right? It will return the class of that object, or some others like very basic but common for every object methods, right? We don't need that much. We just want to call this method that we created speak. It doesn't return anything. If you remember, that method just print that hello, like whatever we speak, value into console. So that's all we want to do right now, okay? And you remember each line except for open and close curly bracket, each line in Java should end with semicolon. You see over here is its method called or variable, or we created these objects. We need to end with semicolon, otherwise we'll get an error. Okay, and let's run it. Let's run it and see what we have in console. And we have this hello, right? We can even, no, we cannot do that now. But that's okay. That's what I want to tell you. So that's hello, which came from here, from this class. Any questions here? This is very important. What we did today, we learned about fields, about methods, about data types, about class, and about objects. That's actually a lot, honestly. And we also learned about encapsulation and different access modifiers. Okay? Any questions, or I will ask questions here. All good? Okay, so tell me, what is encapsulation? Can someone type in the chat, what is encapsulation? Hiding data, yes, correct. And how is that done? Like, what do you use to hide data in Java? How is that implemented? Yes, with access modifiers. Good, very good. And what access modifiers are there? Public, great. Private, great. Anyone can remember? Yes, protected, very good. Someone, and one more, if you can remember. Default, very good. Or package visibility, it's called. Like, I won't tell you that most people, even on interviews, when you ask them what access modifiers are there, they most times will tell just three: public, private, and protected. And then sometimes I ask, is there one more? So package visibility, this default one, is kind of less popular, and sometimes people don't even remember about it. Okay, so tell me, what is class? Who can tell me what is class in Java? in any word, in any simple word, in your own words of understanding, how you understand it. It's a description of the object. Very good. Like this is my favorite, 3 words. Or blueprint, very good, of the object also. So it's description of the object. And then if you kind of open, now we can go back to presentation and see what actual definition about class, right? So definition for the class is, oh my God, I'm gonna mess up a little bit. Let's see. So it's a blueprint for creating object, a particular data structure, providing initial values for state, member variables or attributes, and implementations of behavior. Implementation of behavior is method, actually, right? Member of function or methods. Yeah. So also I want you to remember a little bit of terminology. Methods are members of the class. Members also, it's like another word. It's like state and behavior. Sometimes they can say member of the class for method, okay? And attribute is also like fields, attributes sometimes called. Okay, can someone explain what is object then? How you understand what is object? Object is a bit harder, huh? What is object? So let's see, I'll show you over here. Yeah, it's a member of the class. No, member of the class is method, actually. Object is an entity of the class, right? Let me see where I have this explanation for the object class, methods, encapsulation. Over here, I think, yes. Object is the entity with some characteristics, state and behavior. Entity of the class, I would say here. So object is the entity of the class. It's created with the keyword new and constructor, which is the same as the name of the class. Objects have state and behavior. That's how you answer it. Yes, very nice. Okay, and what types in Java can you remember? Like what types? Give me at least 3 types of variables. That thing. In the beginning we discussed unique ID, not necessarily primitive. Int, char, long. Very good. Yes, int. Any other? String. Yes. Double, very good. That's what you say. Double, float, yes, Boolean, very good. And now I want to get back really quickly to this data types slide, because in the beginning, we just went to the primitive data types section, but over here, non-primitive data types. So I missed it because it was harder in the beginning before you learned what is class, to understand what is non-primitive data type. So non-primitive data type is actually our customized class that we create. So our objects, any objects we create, are non-primitive data types. Why not primitive? Because primitive are those Boolean, char, integers, and non-primitive is the types created from the class. A class is customized. You see, non-primitive data types. And I told you already that string is a class. So over here we have the string class. Array is another class that we can use in Java, and there are many, many more. And any class that you created will have like non-primitive type for your object, okay? The only thing, like in terms of terminology, I want to tell you that, as I showed you in IntelliJ, so string is a class and it's built in Java class, right? Person also is a class, but person is a class that I created, right? So the difference over here, like how you call it in terms of type, so those classes that, like those types that created for you by Java like string, for example, they called also wrappers, right? Because sometimes you may want to use not integer as over here, but in Java, you can also use integer starting with uppercase, integer, like this, you see? And I also can call it age and say it 12. I cannot call it age because it's integer, it's already used. So you see, I told you that int starting with lowercase is primitive data type. But in Java, you can also use integer starting with uppercase, and it also will be kind of int value. But you see, it's starting with uppercase, it means there is a class for that. And that class called wrapper. Wrapper means it kind of wrap over primitive class, right? So we have integer, something typical, and the wrap around it is integer data type. So it's non-primitive data type, and same you can do for double, uppercase, float, uppercase Boolean. Why do we need it? I'll tell you a bit later, but for now, just know there are some kind of more complicated types to hold values. They have more methods actually as a string, right? String has more methods, that's why it was created. And sometimes with integers, with some other data, you need to do more than just primitive data types allow you. Okay, so that's what I wanted to tell you. Any questions? If no questions, we will get to homework overview. Okay, let's see what we have for you for homework today. Our homework was here, how to create an object, you know. So first of all, read about code convention, and then I want you do the following. So in your project that you already probably created where your method main is, if you haven't yet, please create one project. You can call it whatever, test, homework, one. You need to create another class and call it city. So it's a second class, separate from the class where your main method is. Separate class, second class called city. And you want to add the following properties there, or fields. It's also called properties. Maybe you heard that I didn't mention to the class city. City name and population. That's easy. Again, you should think yourself, what type should these variables have? Or maybe let's discuss now what types for city name and for population it could be. I think I again missed the chat. Okay, it's here. String for what? For city name, probably, yeah. What about population? Int. Okay, integer could work. But again, depends on the city. You remember what's the value of your integers. Maybe you can use something else, maybe long, maybe int is enough. Check what values can integer hold. Okay? Okay. Then I want you to that class add method display, right? And that method should print to the console city name and population. And over here, there is a bit of complication, like how to print city name and population. So inside your print method, you remember when I created method speak, right? When I created method speak, I want you to try to figure out yourself. I didn't pass any parameters over here, right? It's just empty. Parentheses are empty. But you can use any of those values, name or age or salary, not even by passing parameters, but inside the method itself to print it. For example, I can do what? I can do print name, okay? Or also like a little hint, to print two different strings and to have a better visibility, in quotes, I can do this, name, semicolon, and then add plus sign. What does it mean? It means whenever I print name, the name will be printed first and then actual value, right? Oh, but over here it will be hard for you. You will not know how to set the name. And it's our next class. Ah, it will be hard for you. You know what I want you also do? This. I want you to create, let's see, if you know, let's do this. It's on your own decision. If you can do that, that's fine on your own. If no, we'll discuss it in the next class. How to print, how to set the value for the name. But for now, you remember how I told you that all these values should be public or private, right? Try to do it public. So the access will be everywhere, basically. Okay, and you can even assign it, like do it like that. Okay, just for the sake of this homework. Okay, then create class book, another class, just to practice, and add some of your own properties, at least 3. Add some properties to that class and add 2 methods and create 2 objects in class main. Okay, so for this class, actually, you know what, I don't want to make you too confused, but you can try to do it like that, this homework. But don't bother too much if you will not be able to set any values to name. If you can do that, if you can kind of Google maybe, or struggle, if you like struggling, you can do that. But if no, it's fine, because it's our will be next topic, how to set values to the class fields, right? Part of it, actually. Okay, and then create one more class, call it book. Again, it's more on your own, like customize it as you wish and add 2 methods and create 2 different objects. Okay, so we have our chat activity. Can we set variable and a value for the name and that print? So you kind of can, but the question is how you're going to do that. Okay, how should I understand what kind of keywords should I write in string, etc.? Oh, you mean what kind of type you should write, right? For your, so that's your own decision. You need to think what will be the best, you know, because that's what programmer, yeah, it says recording stopped. I actually don't know why, but I think because we get into some kind of very, very specific discussion, or there might be a limit. Yeah. So let's see about type, how you decide what type it is. So it's your best guess, because there is no actual rule. That's how you implement your program. For example, if it's a name, right? So most obviously, if we check all the types over here, the name should be string, right? It's kind of understood. The name should be string, right? So if we discuss about age or some numeric value, right? So most likely it is integer. So in your case, mostly all those fields will be integers or strings, honestly, for now, right? Maybe doubles, maybe you can put some weight or whatever, but there is no kind of rule, right? So those types, it's like, you know, it's like Lego pieces. And you think, what I need here? Maybe I need for name string, right? Because name should be kind of string. I mean, you can create variable name with a type of integer, but it doesn't make much sense, right? Because names should be meaningful, and you pick the type basically thinking what's the purpose of that field, right? If the purpose of that field to hold, remember, everything in programming is storing data and manipulating with data. To store data, we need some objects or fields or variables. And to manipulate with data, we need some methods, right? So if I think what my program should do, it should have some, I don't know, name and data for the person. So I think, what types should I have? It's kind of, I'm creating myself, right? It's like, I don't know, it's like recipe you're cooking, right? You can do whatever you want. There are some better recipes. There are like something, I don't know, more simple or more complicated. But right now it's up to you to decide. The good practice, like just to think what's the purpose of that, right? I can tell you, name is a string, age is integer, and so on and so forth. But literally, it's up to you. There are rare cases, for example, as I told you, like salary usually in cents, and it should be long. But it rather, you know, some very practical experience, practical decisions that made with time for very specific projects. Most times it's kind of very straightforward, you know, like you use in, you know, your best guess what the type should be. Okay. Yeah, more like logic. It's only your logic. Okay. So I'm done with all the materials that I want to deliver today for you. Yeah. And if you have any other questions, we still have some time. We can discuss them. Maybe you want to go into details of anything that we talked about today. So we talked about code convention, about different data types, about class, methods, object, and how to create them. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Any question, if you have, we can cover them. If no, I'm just gonna stop sharing. Thank you so much. I hope all of you got good understanding of class and object concepts, and I see you in the next class. We will go further. Can you briefly describe void, print, etc.? Yes. So when we talked about void, void is a keyword that reserved for the methods when they don't return any type. So the signature of the method, let me share screen one more time. So you will see how this is implemented over here, right? So look at this method declaration picture, right? So this is access modifier, right? Public, we know about it. Integer, it's what we return. It's basically result of our method. So our method somehow manipulated with data, right? In our case, we have example with addition, like a plus b. So it should return some value, maybe pass it and assign it to another variable, to another integer, right? And to do something later on. For example, we want to count what is the total salary of all employees in the company. How much, like our finance department asked to write a program for that. They give you a list of all people. We loop through each salaries and return them total number of that, right? Or for example, when you buy stuff in the supermarket, right? You buy your groceries, right? You go like din, 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 on a checkout and you get your total, right? So basically there is just a simple function that on runtime adds values and returns your total. So that's basically what methods will return. Sometimes we don't need method to return anything. There are some methods like which will just print some values, or there are some other like built-in methods for your system, which you don't even need sometimes to know what they're doing. Maybe even in testing, you know, whenever we write a test method, because each test in terms of testing is a method, will be a method eventually. Test doesn't actually need to return anything. We just need to do something with like confirm the button is there, confirm like some JSON value is there, just to verify, to assert, right? We don't need to return anything. So most times, not most time, all times, test methods will return void, means will not return anything because we don't need it. We just need to perform something inside method body, right? So this is method name. And those are parameters inside methods. Basically, those are values that we can pass inside method. Like when we call method like that, we can put some actual integer values. For example, 2 and 3. Let me actually, you know what? I can even write really quickly this type of method inside our person right? For example, I want to write an integer method which calls sum. It has int 8, int b, and it will print a plus b, okay? And it will return a plus b, like that. So I can go to my main, and from my person, one female, I can call now method sum. You see it appeared over here, sum. And you see name also appeared because I changed access modifier. Over here, remember I put it public. So it's available right now when I see it name, it's that name. But I'm interested in sum right now. And sum shows me like it's a hint, int 8, int b. It means I need to pass some values instead a and b, some actual values. So for example, I want to pass 2 and 3. You see, I didn't even type this a colon, b colon. You don't need to type, it's kind of grayed out. It kind of gives you a hint, like shows you what are those parameters. And now when I print it, it should print 5. So let me run this. And we got 5 over here. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Anything else? Anything that is not clear? Something that you wanna discuss? Go over this again one more time. In our next class, there was a lot of information. Yes, of course, I can go over one more time on a high level what we have already discussed. And yeah, I'm still stuck in Maven Selenium, Severus. Do I just move on when I can get 6? Right now, we will not touch, for next couple of sessions, we will not touch Maven or Selenium. Yes, so you can have time kind of to fix your errors, right? Because right now, I want you to focus with me on the session on a core Java, okay? Later on, you will need Selenium and Maven for testing, okay? We don't need to run the debug, do we? For now, no. In general, yes, right? Okay. Okay. I know that errors are frustrating. I hate them when you need to set up your environment. Most times, actually try to Google just your errors because many people set up in Selenium and Maven get similar errors as yours. So the best you can do, you Google your error exactly, and then you will see maybe on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is very popular resource when people tell you what you actually can do to help with your setup, because each setup is very specific, right? But don't get frustrated too much, right? Right now, I want you to focus on Java core, right? Before we get to that. So you kind of need to have solid understanding of object-oriented programming. What is class? What is object? What is encapsulation? How do we kind of deal with this? Okay. Okay. So any other questions? Last minute question. If no,
Yes,
thank you.
we
Oh,
will
yes.
get, we will get, because I'm trying to do the homework right now and I'm still
Okay.
having trouble. So I'm guessing Sunday, we could get more help on it.
Yeah, I think it's Saturday. Is it Saturday or Sunday?
I don't know. I thought it was Sunday. I don't know.
Like, okay, on our next class. Yeah, we will take a look at the homework. Yeah, it should be very similar to what we already did with this person class, right?
Okay.
But just kind of your own decisions, what to add and how to add those types.
Okay. So I just go over the video. When will the video be uploaded?
Do we need to save it? So usually Alex uploads the video. It should be like either today or tomorrow. Usually very quick with that. He's responsible. Yeah, I asked him that you're waiting for the videos.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So any other questions? No, I'm talking about our homework. You mean to save homework? Oh, you mean to upload it somewhere?
Can you hear me?
So, yes.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is like, okay, so when we input the coding, the script and everything, do we need to run, use the run button to actually see the result?
Yes, you should. You should actually click that green button and run it and see in console that it worked. If you printed something. If you're not printing,
Yeah, go ahead. IntelliJ normally like automatically saves the work, right?
yes, it does. But I do recommend to save it.
Okay, that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Because the reason why I asked earlier about the debug thing is we were having an issue with the debugging, and Alex was gonna figure that out because it gives us some of us a failing error. It says failure to unexpected something. So so we tried to download a different Java version and everything, but that wasn't the case. So when we use the run button, the play, it works, but when we debug, it doesn't. That's why I was asking you earlier if you don't have, because if you don't have to debug, it's fine for now. But yeah, my question.
So it could be something else, because whenever you run, if it works, it means it's okay. When you say debug, do you debug like using breakpoint, or you like what exactly do you do?
Yeah, using a breakpoint, exactly.
So, and it shows you an error.
In debug, it shows you an error message. I don't know the exact error message now because I don't have it up. I mean, I'll tell you right now. One sec.
Yeah, you can probably paste it, but I do recommend like just try to Google that error message. If you already reinstalled the Java, if nothing helps, sometimes I just reinstall the system fully. If it's something like you did in the beginning, some kind of mistake you did in the beginning.
I think it's not just me. I think some of us are having the same issue with the IntelliJ. I don't know software. But anyways, Alex said he was gonna get back to us about that. So just give him a reminder, if you don't mind.
Okay, maybe pin him in a chat.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. It shouldn't be like something global if you say run and works correctly for you. Because when you do debug, it's actual run to some point, right? It just runs and stops at some point. It should be very, very similar, actually the same almost.
So like it tells us that it quit unexpectedly, and when you Google it, there's like so many different like scenarios and issues with that it's tough to even Google it.
I see. Oh, okay. So it's really hard to tell, maybe we can try like next time when we might finish earlier and we can check what's going on if you will not be able to resolve it till then. But usually like what you do, you say, for example, you put a breakpoint like this, right? And you click run, debug, you click debug, right? Oh, can you see my screen? No, I stopped sharing, right?
Yeah, it gives you the test framework quit unexpectedly. That's what it says.
Okay, so maybe it's because maybe it's not a Java. If it's test framework, maybe it's something with the Maven configuration or with alert report. I think it might be related to that, right? Because running shouldn't show anything like that. Should show as well if there is more global mistake.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, if it's not going to affect me from doing this homework, then I guess we could skip
it. From today's homework, no need. Yes.
We could revisit that another time. That's fine. No problem.
Yeah. For now, like I want you actually to focus more like on object-oriented programmer, because like it's very, very basic stuff. You might get errors, which, sometimes just someone can help you and you got forward. But right now on these classes, I want you to focus like on Java core first, and once you get that understanding, you will be kind of set for your life.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. Then thank you so much again. Have a great rest of your evening. Please do your homework. Please read about code convention, and I see you next time. Yeah. Bye-bye.